They called it Kholat Shakal, Dead Mountain. To the Mansi, its name warned of misfortune, a cold, lonely slope in the Ural Mountains of Russia. In February 1959, this remote slope became the site of a terrifying puzzle. Something happened here that has baffled investigators for more than 60 years. A group of 9 experienced hikers set up their tent for the night. They were young, strong, prepared for harsh winter conditions, but they would never return. Their story starts with a single chilling discovery: a tent cut open from the inside, standing empty against the howling wind. The hikers were gone, vanished into the bitter cold, leaving behind their warm clothes, their shoes, their supplies. The cuts were not made by someone trying to get in. The evidence showed clearly that the cuts were made from the inside. It was an act of desperation, a frantic escape into a deadly environment. The temperature outside was brutally cold, perhaps as low as -30 degrees Celsius. To run out into that kind of weather without proper coats, hats, or boots was a certain death sentence. Yet that is exactly what they did. They ran from something inside their tent, something so terrifying that facing the frozen wilderness seemed like the better option. The scene was quiet, but it screamed of panic and sudden, inexplicable fear. What could cause such a reaction? The hikers were not amateurs. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, was a skilled outdoorsman. The entire group was made up of students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnical Institute. All of them fit and knowledgeable, they planned their route carefully and had the right equipment. The footprints leading away from the tent told their own silent, terrifying story. A line of tracks made by 8 or 9 people descended the snowy slope. Some of the footprints were made by bare feet. Others were made by feet wearing only socks. A few showed a single boot. The tracks were orderly at first, suggesting they left together, walking calmly, not running in a mad scramble. They walked downhill for nearly 1 mile, away from the relative safety of the forest line, into the open, exposed wilderness. Why did they not run? And why did they walk away from the trees that could have offered shelter from the wind and wood for a fire? The footprints in the snow were the first chapter of a story that would only get stranger and more tragic. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov. He was 23 years old and a talented engineering student. He was a natural leader, respected by his peers for his experience and his calm demeanor. This trip was ambitious, designed to test their skills and earn the highest certification for sportsmanship in hiking. Igor had assembled a team of his most trusted friends and fellow students. They were all bound by a shared love of adventure and the stark beauty of the mountains. Each member was an individual, with their own dreams and personalities, but together they were a cohesive unit, ready to face the challenges of the Arctic wilderness. They were more than a team. They were a family of adventurers, embarking on the journey of a lifetime. Zenaida Kolmogorova, also 22, was a popular and energetic radio engineering student, known for her strength and cheerful spirit. Yuri Yudin was the 10th member, but he turned back early due to severe back and leg pain, a twist that made him the sole survivor. Lyudmila Dubanina, 20, Alexander Kolovatov, 24, and Rustem Slobodin, 23. Georgy Krivonishenko, 23, a cheerful engineer who brought his mandolin. Yuri Doroshenko, Nicholas Thibault Brignol, and Semyon Zolotaryov, the oldest at 38, a foryou veteran who joined late. These were not just names on a list of victims. They were vibrant young people, full of life and promise. They took photographs during their journey, smiling, laughing, working together, and enjoying the stark, beautiful landscape. They wrote in a shared diary, documenting their daily progress and their light-hearted moments. The diary entries show no signs of conflict or distress. They describe typical winter trek challenges in an optimistic tone. They were exactly where they wanted to be, doing what they loved. The final photos and diary entries give us a precious glimpse into their final days. A group of friends united in their adventure, unaware of the horror that awaited them. When the hikers did not return as scheduled, their families began to worry. Igor Dyatlov had promised to send a telegram by February 12th. When no message arrived, delays were first considered normal. But as days passed with no word, concern became a gnawing fear. Families pressured the Institute and the Regional Sports Committee to act. They knew the group was experienced, and they knew the Ural winters. Finally, on February 20th, a full-scale search and rescue was launched. Volunteers, teachers, military planes, and helicopters joined an immense effort. The search area was vast, remote, and buried in deep snow. Harsh weather hampered progress. Days of flying and trekking yielded nothing. Hope of finding them alive faded with each day. The breakthrough came on February 26th. A pilot saw something on the eastern slope of Kholat Syakhl. They found the hikers' abandoned tent, damaged, cut from the inside, with belongings neatly arranged. The first bodies were found at the edge of the forest, under a large old cedar tree. Yuri Doroshenko, Georgy Krivonishenko, found lying side by side next to a small, hastily built fire, dressed only in their underwear. Hands scraped and raw, branches broken up to 5 meters, frantic effort to climb the cedar. The scene was heartbreaking. 3 more bodies were discovered between the cedar and the camp. Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, Rustem Slobodin, found at different distances, as if trying to return to the tent. Igor clutching a small birch branch, his body facing the camp. Zinaida, furthest up the slope, frozen in a crawling pose, still fighting for safety. Rustem had a small skull fracture. Doctors said it was not fatal. All 3 died of hypothermia. 2 months later, as the snow melted, the last 4 were found in a nearby ravine, buried under 4 meters of snow. Lyudmila Dubinina, Nicholas Thibault Brignol, Alexander Kolovatov, Semyon Zolotaryov. They were better dressed than the others, having taken clothes from their friends, a sign they survived longer. Evidence suggested attempts to build a makeshift snow shelter. Unlike the first 5, these 4 suffered violent injuries. Nicholas with a massive skull fracture, Lyudmila and Semyon with multiple broken ribs. The medical examiner said the trauma resembled a car crash. Lyudmila was missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her upper lip. The soft tissues of her face had been removed. Some clothing showed low levels of radioactive contamination. These gruesome findings made the mystery more complex. Hypothermia could not explain these injuries, or the radiation. One of the most widely accepted scientific explanations is a small slab avalanche. A layer of snow on the slope above the tent cracked and slid down. Not a roaring avalanche, but a localized slab. The weight could crush part of the tent, cause injuries, and spark fear of a larger slide. Fearing a second avalanche, they cut their way out and moved downhill to safer ground, intending to return later. They had cut a tent ledge. Weather brought wind and fresh snow, forming a dense, unstable slab. Some internal injuries match crushing pressure from compacted snow. Their orderly retreat fits avalanche escape procedure. But investigators saw no avalanche debris. The slope angle was under 30 degrees, and tent poles remained standing. An object on the tent was undisturbed. Footprints away were orderly, not panicked. A 2021 model suggested a delayed slab was possible, but questions remain, including why they walked so far. The theory struggles with the missing tongue and other anomalies, sometimes attributed to scavengers and decay. The avalanche idea offers a natural trigger, but many strange details stay unresolved. Another natural explanation focuses on a katabatic wind. Sudden blasts of cold, dense air that can race downhill at hurricane speeds. Such a wind would be deafening and disorienting, making it impossible to stay in the tent. They might have cut their way out, believing escape into the forest was their only chance. Terrifying low-frequency sounds could fuel panic and confusion. This could explain the sudden departure. But experienced hikers might have held the tent and waited. A blast of air cannot break ribs or crush a skull. The massive internal injuries are not explained by wind alone, nor are the radiation traces. It also fails to explain why the group separated, or why the first two were found scantily clad. The wind theory may trigger panic, but, like the avalanche idea, it leaves the core mystery untouched. A more unusual but scientifically plausible theory involves infrasound, very low-frequency waves below human hearing. Under certain winds and terrain, a Kármán vortex street could generate powerful infrasound. Exposure can cause shortness of breath, nausea, and an intense, baseless sense of panic. This might explain why they cut the tent and fled without gear. They were not running from a thing, but from a feeling of horror. Yet there is no way to prove it happened that night, and its effects on groups are not fully understood. A sound wave cannot break bones or crush a skull. It offers a trigger for panic, but it does not explain radiation or the missing soft tissues, or the missing tongue. Intriguing, but incomplete, a ghost of a sound that cannot be proven. Given the Cold War context, many believe the hikers were accidental victims of a secret military weapons test. The Urals were a hub of military activity. Perhaps they camped too near a clandestine test. Reports of glowing spheres in the sky are often cited. A concussive device, even a parachute mine, could create severe internal injuries without obvious external wounds. Low-level radiation on clothes could point to a radiological event. The quick closure and classified files fueled suspicion of a cover-up. But no tests are documented there that night. No fragments, no craters, no obvious environmental damage. Lev Ivanov later said he was ordered to close the case and suspected flying spheres. But suspicion is not proof. This theory also doesn't clarify why the group split or why some undressed. It explains injuries and radiation cleanly, but relies on events that remain unproven. When logical explanations fail, imagination turns to the paranormal. Some propose a UFO. Orange spheres matching R-7 rocket tests from Baikonur are a more mundane fit. Alien narratives are popular, but have no forensic support. Others suggest a Yeti attack. A powerful creature could inflict crushing injuries in theory. But no non-human prints, no animal hairs, no feeding or claw evidence were found. Investigators saw only the 9 hikers' tracks. Lyudmila's missing tongue is likely scavenging and decomposition in a wet ravine. The Yeti theory is a thrilling horror story, not a credible forensic explanation. For over 6 decades, the Dyatlov Pass Incident has remained a chilling enigma. We have analyzed the evidence, from the torn tent to devastating injuries, exploring theories from natural to paranormal. Avalanche and katabatic wind provide plausible triggers for the initial escape. They fit some facts, the move away from the slope, but struggle with the extreme injuries and bizarre details. The military test theory neatly explains crushing injuries and radiation, in tune with Cold War secrecy, but remains unproven. Simpler ideas, infighting or Mansi conflict, were dismissed. There was no sign of a fight, and locals helped the search. Each theory explains a part, but no single theory explains it all. We remember the 9 as vibrant friends. A strange, blurry image may be the final glimpse before they fled. The official cause of death, a compelling natural force, a vague answer to violent questions. To this day, the files may be open, but the truth on Dead Mountain remains frozen in the snows of 1959.